The air on Mount Carmel was thick, not just with the oppressive heat of the Middle Eastern sun, but with a tension you could almost taste. A 3-year drought had baked the land into a cracked, desperate canvas. The once lush slopes were now dust and brittle scrub. And on this parched mountain, two faiths were about to collide in a spectacle of divine power. On one side stood a lone figure. His name was Elijah, a prophet of the God of Israel. His face was etched with the lines of a man who had walked through famine and faced down kings. His gaze was steady, uncompromising. On the other side, a sea of priests, 450 of them, prophets of the pagan god Baal. They were adorned in fine linens, their confidence loud and ostentatious, backed by the full power of the throne of King Ahab and his queen, Jezebel. The entire nation of Israel had gathered, a vast, silent crowd. Their faces were a mixture of fear, doubt, and a desperate flicker of hope. They had been torn between two loyalties, their spirits as dry and barren as the land around them. Elijah's voice cut through the heavy silence, a challenge ringing out across the mountainside. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him. The people offered no answer. But here was the crucial rule. No fire could be lit by human hands. The God who answers by fire, Elijah declared, his voice echoing with authority, he is God. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The terms were set. The stage was ready. The prophets of Baal went first. Their energy was frantic, a storm of activity under the relentless sun. They heaved their bull onto the altar, their movements a choreographed display of religious fervor. Then the spectacle began. From morning until noon, they danced and chanted around their altar. "Oh, Baal, answer us!" they cried, their voices rising into a desperate, rhythmic plea. The sun was a cacophony of human effort, a wall of noise meant to batter the gates of heaven. But there was no voice, no answer. The sky remained a brilliant, indifferent blue. The sun beat down, and sweat streamed down their faces, mixing with the dust. As the hours dragged on, their chants grew more frenzied. They began to leap upon the altar, their movements becoming wild, almost convulsive. Still, silence from the heavens. Elijah watched, his expression unreadable. Round midday, a touch of mockery entered his voice. He called out to them, his words dripping with sarcasm. "Shout louder! Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." His taunts were like fuel on a fire of desperation. The priests of Baal, stung and enraged, redoubled their efforts. The ritual took a dark, bloody turn. They drew swords and spears, and as was their custom, they began to cut themselves. Blood mingled with their sweat, covering their bodies in a grotesque display of devotion. They raved and prophesied, working themselves into a religious ecstasy, a frenzy of self-inflicted pain and hopeless prayer. The afternoon wore on. The sun began its slow descent toward the great sea, casting long, stark shadows across the mountain. The prophets of Baal finally collapsed, exhausted, defeated, their bodies wounded and their voices raw. Their altars stood untouched. The bull lay cold upon the wood. The sky had offered nothing but heat and light. A profound, heavy silence fell once more upon Mount Carmel, broken only by the ragged breaths of the defeated priests. The first act of this divine drama had ended in failure. Now it was Elijah's turn. He moved with a quiet, deliberate calm that stood in stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. He called the people to him. "Come here to me," he said, and they drew closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. The first thing he did was repair the altar of the Lord, which lay in ruins. He took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel, a silent reminder of their unified heritage and their covenant with God. Methodically, he rebuilt the altar stone by stone. It was an act of restoration, a symbol that he wasn't just calling for fire, but for the heart of a nation to be rebuilt. Once the altar was complete, He did something that seemed utterly insane in a land starved of water. He dug a trench around it, deep and wide. Then he had the people bring what little water they had. Fill for large jars with water, he commanded, and pour it on the offering and on the wood. They obeyed. The water cascaded over the bowl, soaking the wood and running down into the trench. Do it again, Elijah said. They did. Do it a third time. They poured again, until the meat was saturated, the wood was dripping, and the trench around the altar was completely filled with water. There could be no trickery now. No hidden embers, no possibility of spontaneous combustion. The entire sacrifice was drenched, a waterlogged offering under an open sky. Any normal fire would be impossible. The crowd watched, utterly baffled. Was this faith, or was it madness? Elijah had made the impossible even more impossible. He had raised the stakes to a level that only a true God could meet. With everything prepared, Elijah stepped forward. The sun was low, casting a golden red glow over the landscape. The time for the evening sacrifice had arrived. He didn't shout. He didn't dance or cut himself. He simply lifted his face to the heavens and prayed. His voice was clear, calm, and filled with a quiet confidence. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, he began, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. It was a simple prayer, a direct appeal, a request not for his own glory, but for God's and for the restoration of his people. And then it happened. Before the last word of his prayer had faded, a flash of brilliant, searing light tore through the sky. A column of fire, impossibly bright, descended from the clear heavens. It didn't just lick at the wood, it fell with a deafening roar, a supernatural force of immense power. The fire instantly consumed the bowl, every last piece. It vaporized the water-soaked wood, turning it to ash in a heartbeat. It burned up the very stones of the altar, reducing them to dust. It even licked up all the water that had filled the trench, leaving the ground scorched and dry. A collective gasp went through the crowd, a single, unified sound of pure shock and awe. Where moments before there was a waterlogged altar, now there was only smoking, blackened earth. The heat washed over their faces, a testament to the unbelievable power they had just witnessed. They had asked for a sign, and they had received an inferno from heaven. The people who had been silent and wavering fell on their faces as one. The doubt was gone, burned away by the divine fire. A single cry rose from thousands of throats, a chant that thundered across the mountain, full of conviction and terror and relief. The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God! The showdown was over. The sky was clear. The air was still thick with the smell of ozone and ash, and the heart of a nation had, in a single, fiery moment, been turned back. On Mount Carmel, a lone prophet and his unshakable faith had faced an empire of doubt and won, not with human strength, but with a fire that came from beyond the world. Thank you so much for watching. This story is a powerful reminder of faith in the face of impossible odds. If you found this moving or inspiring, please hit that like button and subscribe for more epic stories from history and scripture. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this incredible event. Until next time.